Hello, welcome back to Interjections. It's Jay, your favorite host. I've got two out of the three regular members here, Andrew and Miko. Irfan is continuing his malfeasance and refuses to contribute, gallivanting around Europe, I believe Iceland at this time. Instead of Irfan, we've improved upon Irfan with a legend in the Inter fan community. We are honored to be joined by Anthony from Inter Worldwide. Anthony, my brother, how you doing?
Oh man, you should see how wide the grin is on my face, man. I'm doing really well. It's an absolute pleasure to be here amongst you and the boys. I'm in great company. We've been speaking for a long time together in what is known as a community with a lot of strong personalities, known as Forza Interforums, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to be here this evening and chat with yourself, Andrew and Miko. So I'm very excited.
Thanks for joining us. Andrew, how are you doing?
You know, this is my first time being on one of these episodes where I haven't had hosting responsibilities, and I kind of like it. You can host going forward, Jay.
We'll take turns. We'll take turns. Miko, how's it over there in sunny Finland?
Yeah, not too sunny. But yeah, not much. Woke up and realized Inter are still the champions of Italy, so everything's going fine.
Enjoy it while you can, my friend.
The countdown's on.
It starts already.
Okay, so we're not gonna do the boring old, how long have you been supporting Inter? Who's your favorite player kind of thing. Let's jump right into it with our special guest. So, Anthony, I'm going to put you on the spot straight away. Inter's Mercato, cooking or cooked?
Bro, room temperature, it's still very much edible. I don't understand why everyone's ignoring it and saying that it's off. It's not off. It's not fully cooked and off at all. It's fine. To put it more seriously, I like to look contextually at the league and everybody around me, and I don't see anything happening anywhere. Juve and Giuntoli's market is a disaster. Milan are filling gaps with players who are nobodies and are going to be nobodies. The only squad that has remotely improved is Roma, and they're not exactly buying players that would start for our side, let alone any side that would compete at the top or the second top level in Europe. Napoli and Conte are heading towards a nosedive early. I can just see it. Everybody can see it. In fact, we can hear it. They barely scraped Modena in the Coppa, and I know it's the Coppa, but for God's sake, it's the first round of the Coppa. The fact that that even happened was disgusting. So all relative, Inter knew they didn't have much of a job that they needed to do. In fact, the job was virtually done before Oak Tree arrived. So I like to look at our Mercato as Zielinski and Taremi actually being a quality above any of the signings that any of our rivals have made. So regardless of whether it's cooking, I'm satisfied, man.
Interesting answer. I'll say that, I think the fact that we signed Zielinski and Taremi so early, even prior to the Mercato, it kind of gives the impression that we've done nothing in the Mercato, because they joined prior to it starting. I will say that both of them are currently injured in what is a preseason that is, I don't know, it seems a bit muted. I mean, you see these other teams, I won't mention their names, but, playing exciting friendlies in the United States and beating the likes of Real Madrid and Man City and Barcelona. Meanwhile, we're playing relatively lower key friendlies and with a lack of Mercato movement. It's felt like a very quiet preseason, wouldn't you think? Or wouldn't you say, rather?
Definitely. And relative to the opponents that we've played, 100%. And I think we're going to get that little boost when we play Chelsea in, I think, 3 hours time, our time here. I definitely won't be staying awake to watch that, especially since watching our luck with our injuries this preseason. But they were two players that were definite upgrades for what they were brought in for. Taremi is looking to replace both the performances, appearances, and numbers, or improve the numbers of Alexis Sanchez, which he should do. And Zielinski is there to provide cover in minutes and ground for Mkhitaryan, which he should do. And it is unfortunate that they're both injured at the moment, but like our other injury, arnautovic, it's not serious. They're back virtually in full team training. They probably won't be risked for Genoa, but if they needed to be, they would probably be available for Lecce. Our other injury is De Vrij. So I don't know if you're going to get into it soon, but if anyone was still sitting on the fence of whether we still need another centre back reinforcement this Mercato, I think De Vrij going down in the 93rd minute might have tipped a few more people, me included, towards the side of go in there and get somebody else.
Let me quiz you on that a bit. So earlier you said you're relatively satisfied with our Mercato, partly because of the quality of individuals we brought in, and partly because when you compare our team against the immediate rivals, you're asserting that it's all relative. Having said that, on the topic of the central centre back, you do think a centre back signing is necessary, and would you say that your final rating of the Mercato depends on that, on our ability to reinforce that position?
Not necessarily, because I would still say that I would be all for us being proactive in shifting Arnautovic and Correa. Like, I remember seeing some preseason lineups on forums, chats, wherever everyone looks online. And you know how some people put like their lineups on like on a pitch, and they put the depth in there as well. Like they start with their main player. Like for example, they'll put Lautaro and Taremi behind them. I saw so many lineups, and no one ever put Correa there. The disrespect and the assumption that he is done in this team goes back before this even Mercato started. Nobody expects this guy to play football at this club anymore because he offers jack shit. You said it before, like look at the quality that we're playing in preseason. He's having shitty performances in preseason against Lugano-esque opposition. It's a disaster, and he needs to go. Simple as that. And while I'm happy with Toro, Turam, and Taremi, we're going to need somebody better than Arnautovic and Correa if we're going to do anything in Europe. We could go into the Serie this season with that, and we just might crawl over the line. It would be bloody painful to watch. But that attack prevents us from doing anything in Europe. Centre back wise, yeah, with De Vrij's injury, we're now one bad injury away, Jay, from being in disaster zone. And by disaster zone, I mean doing things like calling Federico Di Marco or Carlos Augusto or Matteo Darmian to play regularly in those positions, even though I would still probably prefer to see Darmian rotate in centre back than as a wing back. If there's one positive I can end on, because I feel like this dips a little negatively, Bisek looks like he's gained about 10% muscle mass, about 10 kilograms in muscle as well. He looks like an absolute beast. Give him as many minutes as you need to grow his confidence and grow his market value this season.
Agreed. Andrew, what say you? Are you concerned about the... I know we've touched upon this in previous episodes, but are you concerned about the Mercato with, what is it, a week left until the season starts? When does the season start?
Yep, next weekend we'll be live.
Jesus. Okay. How do you feel about things so far?
Am I wrong? I know we have a reputation as a positive, uplifting inter-podcast, but am I wrong to say the vibes are a little poor right now with the team, with the fans? You've got a string of horrific results in the preseason. Not that I care too much about preseason results. You have a large contingent of over 30 players, over 30-year-old players who are injured or picking up knocks. I've seen reports that Anthony mentioned that Correa is going to be starting the first game because we don't have enough healthy strikers. It just seems like everything is slightly off. And when you hear about, you know, we talked about Milan's great preseason form, or just the positive news coming out of the Juve camp around their new signings and they believe in Motta, it just feels like, okay, is there going to be a championship hangover here? I think there are a couple obvious holes in the squad. Anthony talked about them. A center back is imperative unless you want to see a horrible scenario where, you know, DeMarco plays left center back. But the one I'm worried about right now is right wing back, because each time I watch Darmian play, it's just clear to me this guy's not cut out for the right wing back position anymore. We need to do something about it. Dumfries still has not renewed his contract, and you can't afford to go into the season with him on an expiring contract. It just seems like there are a few holes around the edges of the squad where if we're talking about a team who's really pedal to the metal, trying to defend their Scudetto, just silencing all doubts, that's not the Mercato we're having. We're having a Mercato where basically rolling it back with the same boys, minus swapping out Sanchez for Taremi and Klaassen for Zelensky. So it's hard to be upset when you frame it like that because sure, the squad's better, but it doesn't feel like a substantial step forward. Miko, what do you think?
Well, I kind of agree with you that while the squad looks good and how do you call it, the setup is fine. It still feels uh, a bit iffy, like or a bit not so sure about this thing kind of stuff because like you said, the injuries we have this a bit aging players, and the injuries is like mm, they are piling up already, and we haven't even started playing yet. So that's a small concern for me as well. But I'm not sure if it's because the preseason, if you've trained really hard or like extra hard because the season will be very long. I don't know if that's the reason for those injuries or not. But yeah, it's a bit concerning since we need to possibly start with Correa, and we have, I don't know, is Zielinski was back in the squad already, why, or how was it? I don't remember. If he's back already, then I think it's fine. Midfield should be fine, but the attack is a bit concerning, and of course the defense, like you mentioned, if De Vrij is out few weeks, so yeah, it's not perfect for sure, but I'm not too worried about our game, how we play. I think we just continue from where we ended last season. Our game, the football we play, that should be fine. And uh, I'm not sure how the schedule look uh, in terms of how many games do we play. In like, do we play only one game per week now at the start, or how it's going? If it's like that, then I don't think it's a massive problem yet with the possible injuries coming, and the injuries we have now. If there's less games played, but when the Champions League starts in September, then it might get a bit more tough at that point.
Agreed. I'm going to say Andrew raised a really good point about championship hangover. Now, I'm a firm believer in the kind of in this school of thought that to maintain a long winning cycle of dominance, you need to kind of, firstly, you need to have a ruthless mentality in the squad. You need to continually improve upon where you don't even think there are improvements to be made. Again, I'm going to use a classic example, hyperbolic, yes, but an example of Juventus dominating the league in the mid 2010s, and then they go out and buy the best striker in the league in Higuain for 90 million when they were already dominating the league. What do? They continue to dominate the league with Higuain, and then when Higuain starts to age a little bit, what do? They go out and buy fucking Cristiano Ronaldo, you know, and then the season after that, I believe they bought De Ligt, who was at the time coming off that Ajax Champions League semi-final run and considered one of the best defensive talents in the world. Again, I'm not suggesting that we need to follow that blueprint exactly, but you see the point I'm trying to make here. If that's on one end of the scale, we're quite a ways away from replicating that. And personally, I think with the championship hangover, with a lack of fresh blood, the lack of competition, I do worry about a little bit of complacency in our guys, and I worry that there is a general lack of ruthlessness in the squad. After all, we are not Juventus, we are not Bayern Munich. We have our own kind of DNA for whatever it's worth, and so I think it goes to show that we don't really have. I mean, the obvious one was from 2005-06 to 2010, but we haven't really had many long periods of sustained dominance. I mean, other than that Mancini to Mourinho kind of era, post Calciopoli to the treble, how many times have we won more than one championship in a row? You know what I mean? It's really not that many. So, Anthony, I ask you, is that a concern? Do you think that we are, or should we be looking to be a bit more ruthless, at least in management, even if our financial situation does not allow us to, go out and buy another top striker or something to compete with Lautaro and Thuram? Should we be a bit more ruthless in the way we operate?
I don't think we've really got the option to be ruthless because what Oak Tree has taken over is, pardon me, is a model that has survived because of the way it has succeeded on the ground level and just above the ground level. Things could be really shitty now had we not had that run to the Champions League final and backed it up with a Scudetto. We've collected what, on the surface are minor trophies, yes, in the Supercoppa or the Coppa Italia, but we went to Saudi Arabia twice and got those Coppas. Nobody else. We did. We got the exposure. We had the most fans. Lautaro was the centerpiece for both of the times that we won it, whether it was against Milan or in that rubbish format that we won it in last season. We've done what we've needed to do on the pitch to keep us where we needed to be. It could be a really messed up situation right now had we not collected those trophies, especially the Scudetto, and made that Champions League run. Once again, it's not like we've got names in our department that just get sacked as well. Marotta is not just the guy for Inter, he's the guy altogether now in Italy. Everybody knows he's a head honcho. He sits up there with the big boys. Whatever his next job is will be bigger than any job that he could get at any club if he is going to continue in this industry. So at the moment, we've sort of just got to roll with the punches of what's going on, which is why I think for myself and plenty of others, getting that second star really was a milestone achievement, not only for the management and for the club, but really for the fans that have been waiting for something like that, because you're right, we don't really have sustained periods of dominance, and our victories and our elations can be very short-lived. So I'm still riding the high now, but as soon as the going gets tough next season, and it's going to be a long season, that new Champions League format is no joke as well, and that's going to be rough. So I don't think we're in a position to be ruthless management-wise. Long story short, to answer your question, I just wish that we were a little more creative in the market. There has to be someone in Spain or France or Germany. Fuck, man, go to the second division, go to the championship in England and get a striker that bagged 12 goals last season. I don't care, but show me something. Show me anything that says you can think outside the box with the breadcrumbs that we have. Maybe they've got something up their sleeve. Maybe they've got something that's going to make fans like you and I, who don't expect much, go, oh, damn, they had something cooking this whole time. They had something working. But until that, I'll stand to be corrected.
Speaking of cooking, as a master chef, I'm going to say that I'm going to make the assertion that Oak Tree has kind of cooked our market a little bit. We've spoken about this a little bit in the past, but it really does seem, at least on a, what are we, third party, fourth party, we're that far removed, but it seems like what we've seen with the defensive situation has been Oak Tree interference. To recap very briefly, we started with rumors about Hermoso, and then those were apparently the signing was rejected due to his age and high wage demands, and then we moved on to Cabal, and that was also declined due to a apparently high transfer fee of 12 to 15 million. And now we're in a situation where we've missed out on both those guys, although Hermoso is still available. And we're heading into the season with one centre-back, or central centre-back, currently available, who is 36 or 37 years old and has just come off groin surgery himself. Now, the groin is a very sensitive area, as we all know, and groin injuries tend to linger. I would much rather he had had a hamstring injury or even a knee injury, because groin injuries can be very, very difficult to treat and difficult to recover from. Just look at one, Stefano Sensi. Do you feel like Oak Tree is interfering in this current, or since they've arrived, Anthony? And do you think that, we saw a rumor recently, or a leak, that as part of Marotta's presidential kind of authority, he'd been given the ability to sign players up to 10 million. And then what was the other kind of condition there? If they wanted to sign up to 20 million, they need to get Antonello's sign off or something like that. But, it just, all fingers point to Oak Tree interference, and personally, I'm just not sure how comfortable I am with it. How about yourself?
I think it would have been foolish to suspect that there wouldn't have been interference when they took over. I think it's just frustrating because the interfering is coming for minor deals, like you said, like that deal for Cabal, who player I didn't really know very well about at all, but when I saw the prices that we weren't going to be budged on, I thought, oh well, we're not going to sign him at all. Whether he gets swooped in by you know who or somebody else, it's not hard to outmuscle player who's on the market. And when we're putting in final bids for whatever our final bid was, I think it was about 10.5 million. Actually, we didn't want to go above there, so that was never going to be realistic. Whether Oak Tree intervened or not, I have a feeling that we would have been just sheerly outmuscled on that deal, like we're outmuscled on about 70% of the deals that we are rumored in. When we hit, it feels good, but when we miss, and we miss often, sometimes we miss and it hurts. Sometimes we miss and we're just like, yeah, another one gone. For Hermoso, I'm not too sure the ins and outs of that deal. So I guess it does actually look like there is a little bit of interference, especially when you take into account that the signings of Taremi and Zielinski were signed under the Suning regime. I think our questions will be answered in the next, because the season starts next week, but the market closes at the end of the month, right? So we've still got about 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks for Oak Tree to at least show us that they're serious about keeping us as the front runners in the league. Do they understand the club? Do they understand the club's objectives? Do they realize how close we are to actually being in a comfortable position to defend this title and go for 21? Because right now, if the league was to start today, yeah, we'd be favorites. And we could afford to slip up and make a banana skin once or twice and still go on and achieve that result. But we're a minor disaster away from being in a dogfight, or worse, losing touch with a team that has a dream run. It's not going to take that much for Antonio Conte to have 38 good games in Serie A, for God's sake. It's not going to take too much for a team to have a really good run and price us out of the game. So if Oak Tree understand this club and understand where it's at, they do need to at least not intervene, or intervene in a positive way. I've got my fingers crossed that we're going to bring one attacker in, and I'm hoping that you go to that at some point in this podcast.
We'll wrap around to that. Andrew, I'm keen to get your thoughts on the market, especially in relation to the Correa Arnautovic situation. I mean, realistically, is there a financial... let me rephrase that. Given our financial situation, is there a realistic means for us to get rid of these guys beyond like some savior from the Middle East taking them off us? I mean, they don't seem to have any suitors. Are we even in a position to terminate Correa, for example?
Well, the latest reports on Arnautovic are strange to me. It's that he had a conversation with management. Management told him, look, you're going to have a reduced role this season, but management is unwilling to sell him because of his regard in the locker room. And this one threw me for a bit of a loop, because you don't think of Arnautovic as someone having clout. This is a guy who went to China during the prime years of his career, came back and was an okay, not great forward for 2 seasons at Bologna. And now he's in the Scudetto winning locker room with clout. That one just is weird to me. So I'm going to assume that Arnautovic is staying. And like we talked about last week, I'm okay with Arnautovic staying as long as it's in a reduced role. The problem on the forward department appears to be Correa. And I don't think the average Inter fan understands how much Correa actually costs the club per season. This guy's one of our highest wage earners, and he's also one of our highest recent transfer fees. So when you look at the per player costs in the squad, he is like one of the 5 most expensive players in the squad. And there's really not any remedy to this situation. It doesn't matter if you find a club willing to take him or if you end up golden handshaking him. Regardless, you're going to be taking a big loss. And maybe the argument is we need to hurry up and try to save some money on his wages, whether it be a handshake or via some club taking him off our hands, and that will unlock a 4th striker. But the thing I'm having up trouble with lately, and I want to get your guys' thoughts, is why did we spend so much money on a backup keeper who's realistically going to play in 5 matches this season when we have such a glaring hole at striker, we have such a glaring hole at center back. We've talked about needing a wing back. It just feels like an inefficient use of resources. Summer was perfectly fine last year. He was great even. I assume he's going to be great again this season. He's old, but we've seen keepers last longer than this. So, of all the choices in the world, you spend 15 million on a reserve keeper, and that's as we get farther into this Mercato, that's a tougher pill for me to swallow. And that's before we even start talking about, I've seen some Inter fans upset with his preseason performances. It just seems like a misallocation of resources. So I'm hopeful that we're sitting here on August 31st or whatever. Correa has been given a golden handshake. We've brought in a low cost additional forward. We have a 5-striker rotation, and that's enough to get us through the season. But there's no smoke right now, right? There are no players we are linked hard and fast to. There are no positions really that we're keenly interested in, according to these experts. The only real concrete Inter news we've gotten recently is Romano coming out yesterday and saying we are unequivocally not going for Hermoso. Not the news I was looking for. So it just seems like we're kind of sitting around, not doing much, man. Just getting ready for the season, and it makes me nervous.
Is that an oak tree thing, do you reckon? Or is that just like an Inter thing?
I think I was going to respond to Andrew that I think the second keeper signing was a bit like an oak tree thing. I feel like it was more about the longer term logic there, and that speaks to me. That speaks oak tree because we really spent all that money. It was like almost 50 million or 30 million straight away to a player who is indeed probably not going to play too much this season. So it feels that it is a bit like a longer term thing, and the money was like sanctioned by Oak Tree that okay, you can spend this thing because that's for long term. But I kind of agree that if we just look this season, I would have been fine with some really cheap veteran second keeper and use that for example that 30 million to something else, maybe to the defense or attack. But the attack, like you discussed, it's a bit it's not so easy to just sign a new player if you already have like two guys you might want to get out first, or you kind of need to get some guys out first because you can't have all those players there. It's just I think the salary costs are too high to keep them there and then add new player on top of that. So it's not so easy. It's not so easy, especially if the players aren't too interested in moving anywhere. Like Korea has rejected all the Turkey and Greece moves when there's been some interest from those countries. So yeah, interesting to see what's gonna happen, especially with Korea.
Interesting that he would prefer to be the fifth choice striker and be not respected by anybody here, then go somewhere like Besiktas and at least rotate a little bit as a third choice. At least give the Marseille thing another crack somewhere else. But no, he'd just prefer to stay here and be Lautaro's bitch. That's just the fact. That's just the fact.
I was talking to a friend about Correa recently, and that friend mentioned Correa's debut and the 2 goals he scored against Verona, coming on as a late sub to win us the game. One just really fantastic header from the edge of the box, and then another left-footed shot right into the corner from outside the box as well. And we're kind of talking about how it went so wrong. And I was saying Correa is not as bad as he has been at Inter, but I think Correa is just a broken player. You think of like the Inter banter era that we mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago. There are so many players that have either, or it's kind of, it's a toxic environment that crushes players beneath the wheels of the machine. And I think we're certainly far out of the banter era, but there are players who, similar to players who kind of fell victim to that in the banter era. I think Correa is just crushed by the weight of expectation, the pressure of being at the big club, the inability to perform, the injuries, the inconsistency, and the lack of playing time, and all the scrutiny, I think, has just been utterly broken by all of this. And I am yet to see any evidence that he's mentally strong enough to overcome it. So, as mentioned, I think what you have left is a fundamentally just broken object that can no longer be repaired. It's sad that he doesn't recognize that, and sad that he doesn't seem to want to make small steps to remedy that by moving to a smaller club and getting some playing time. But I guess it is what it is.
Can't argue.
Let me ask.
If he keeps it up, though, well, like we can see what's going to happen now. If he risks doing this thing for another 6 months or whatever, and these things fade quickly. It's not going to be TSC, Besiktas, Villarreal, Lyon, whatever it is. Next, it's Sampdoria. Or after that, it's Serie B until you seriously get lost in the dust. So he needs to make up his mind quick, smart.
We're on an incredible run of not being able to sell players for just the most obscure reasons. You've had concrete interest in Correa. He turns it down. You have Satriano, who is offered Champions League football in Brest and turns it down because he wants to play in the second division in Spain, reportedly. I have no clue what's going on with these guys, man. But somewhere they're getting poor advice, or they just feel too loved at Inter, because this is just insanity that we're not closing these deals.
This kind of touches upon the ruthlessness that I was talking about before. Juventus basically barred people from, they had like a list of players that are like, no, you're out, you need to find a new club. And that included apparently Chiesa and Nicolosi Caviglia and some other players as well.
McKennie.
McKennie. Chelsea recently did the same with Lukaku and Trevor Chalobah. I hope we're not linked to him again. And a couple of others. But, last week, Gotham mentioned that we shouldn't do this because the vibe at the club is so positive. And, I can kind of see that point too. But when we're having such trouble unlocking the market because of these frustrating stuck pegs that just won't move, at what point do we kind of say enough's enough and kind of take off the, stop being Mr. Nice Guy here?
I don't think it's going to happen.
Those players at Juve hasn't made it any easier for them to move, and that's what I mean. Like you said, we're a positive club. That environment over there just seems toxic at the moment. I don't know what's the game by just trying to cut ties with the players and cutting the contracts, but it just seems like no one's even willing to meet us halfway for a buyout or anything. So virtually we are stuck with them, and I haven't even looked up how many years are on Correa's contract or Satriano's contract for that matter either.
I think Correa's only this 1 year, so should ease our pains next summer. Anyway,
yeah.
But yeah, about being ruthless with the players, I would like to. I would like, or I like what we are doing. That we are not shutting them off completely, like Chelsea or Juve have been doing. But I see the problems it causes us. But I'm not sure if that's the best way to handle the situation, because there's still a few weeks left of the Mercato, and if I remember correctly, it was pretty late last August as well when we got Correa to Marseille. So we shouldn't lose hope yet that there isn't solution. I don't know if Correa is going to start against Genoa for us. It's a bit awkward, since if he's gonna stay, he's probably gonna be a fifth forward, so it's not like he's gonna play much or at all.
Besides starting our first game.
yeah, that makes it so awkward. But I would hope that the club has communicated to the player and the agent that you really need to find a new place for you, that Inter is not, it's not the place anymore for you. As for Arnautovic, I think
there's no hope for Arnautovic. If anything, is even less likely to move than Correa. So
but
because there's a perceived use for him. You know what I mean?
So, and I see more use of Arnautovic than Correa, but I've said this many times in this podcast that Arnautovic is more useful than Correa because, well, Correa is simply totally useless for Inter at this point. But with Arnautovic, I think Inzaghi likes him more, and he's probably not too bothered that Arnautovic would stay. But I can see the problems if he is the fourth forward, because we don't have too much flexibility on the bench if there's Arnautovic and Taremi. So they
Let
are
me
like center forwards both, and yeah, I just I just don't like having him there. But I kind of understand if he stays there and we don't totally like force him out. If we like Andrew mentioned, if the club has talked to the player that okay, you've been a reduced role, and it's if it's fine for him, then it makes it a bit easier for everyone. Like we discussed in the, I remember I mentioned that in the last episode that if Arnautovic is not fine with his reduced role, then that might cause problems. But according to these reports, like Andrew said, if it's fine with him, then it should be a bit easier for everyone. But yeah, go on, Jay.
Let me pivot back to the goalkeeper situation. I personally think summer is finished. I think from like the, I don't know, like 60 to 70% of the way through last season point, he started just letting in these absurdly shit goals, just leaking soft goals left, right, and center. And I don't feel he was particularly good at Euro. And so far in preseason, he's conceded, I mean, not many, but one or two kind of soft goals as well. Thoughts? Do we have a goalkeeper problem here? Martinez, very, very, very early days to say he's good or bad, but yeah, are we looking at a potential issue with the goalkeepers here?
I don't
Massive
think so.
exaggeration, I would say. You can continue, Anthony. You can
No, this
continue,
is
Anthony.
why I think like if like what Miko was saying, like I'm not that against the 15 million spent on Martinez because he did have a good run at Genoa, and I think a big reason for securing him was making sure that if shit does hit the fan with Zoma, whether it's form or injury wise this season, which is a distinct possibility. I mean, when I started my own podcast, which was similar to format to you guys, we're going back a good 5 years ago. I spent the first 3 years, every second episode was about Handanovic. Every second episode was on Handanovic. He pissed me off that much, and it took a while for the fans to catch on. And I thought that we had a goalkeeper problem for 5, 6 years in a row, possibly, which is why I didn't mind Aldero. I thought, well, at the very least, we've got two Serie A quality goalkeepers. Now I know again we've got two Serie A quality goalkeepers. I share Jay's like nerves. This season, you're going to see a decline in summer. You can already see it towards the back end of last season and in the preseason. It's going to be one of those things where he does the right first thing, the right movement, but he's just his age and his agility, it's not going to favor him. He's going to let in some horrible goals next season. I could see some deflections moving past him at an absolute snail's pace while he just watches it stuck in the mud. And Martinez needs to be ready to jump in if injury strikes or if his form shit is really shit.
Andrew, is Summer cooked?
No, he's not cooked. This is a classic J hyperbole, which I'm not willing to go down. Look, we concede so few chances in matches historically that really does under Inzaghi. That hasn't really mattered who is keeper. If I'm going to make an audacious claim that I cannot back up with any measurable data points, I will make it this: give Di Gennaro the reserve keeper role. He looked incredible in 30 minutes in the last meaningless game of the season last year. Let him cook. But no, having Aldero is nice because when Summer missed a few games last year, Aldero was a capable starter. You know, this guy's been in the league. He was able to step in and play well. I understand why we didn't renew Aldero's or exercise his purchase option. It was quite expensive, actually, and he probably wanted to start for Como anyway. I just feel like there were free options available where if you wanted that Serie experience, you could have a short-term fix so we could make a longer-term investment in a position in the squad that I just view as more important, like striker. So if you're worried about summer, you could have brought in like a Consigli to be the reserve keeper. Maybe the problem I have here is that I'm not sold on Martinez, and maybe that's the ultimate problem. If I felt like Martinez was going to be our future first team keeper, I'd be more comfortable with this idea that if Summer went down, he'd be able to step in. But if Summer is cooked, like you're saying, Jay, I'm not convinced we even have a solution to the problem. So maybe that's why I'm upset with this transfer. Regarding Summer himself, I don't know. He looked great against Italy when I watched him play. It looked like a stone wall to me. So no concerns.
I think you're getting confused with how bad Italy was, but
On that note, I'd just like to pour one out for Scamacca. Get well soon, baby.
that is a costly injury. Having said that, we saw how proactive Atalanta was in going out and buying Retegui almost immediately. There was like a 2-day delay between Scamacca getting injured and them going out and getting Retegui. So I got to congratulate them on that. Oh, random news bit that broke last night. Sanchez has moved to Udinese. Did you guys see that? Do you think he'll do well?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so pumped that he's staying in Serie A.
It's nice to see. You so much prefer this, like some guy taking the payday to Saudi Arabia, right? But the Ribéry goes to Salernitana, Alexis going back to Udinese. There's just something about it where you're like, I'm proud of this guy for sticking around in Europe. And clearly the pedigree of competition matters to him more than the paycheck, which I always kind of thought was the case for Alexis. I thought that's why he went to Marseille and he was willing to take a diminished role here. But it just, that guy has fire in him. And even though he's not good enough for Inter anymore, it's nice to see that he's, kind of giving back.
Let me move on to a series of let me put you each on the spot and say, if the market were to close today, where do you think this squad is going to finish? I'll start with you, Anthony.
I never pick us to finish first, but I have to pick us to finish first because it makes sense. And I have to say it with chest. Every season, I think, since 2 decades now, I've picked Juventus to finish first. This will be the first season, I think, that I pick us to finish first. Even when we won it under Conte and Inzaghi last season, the PTSD just always allows me to pick Juve first. But this season, I can't do it. I have to say that we're going in as favourites because I feel like our system should get us over the line when the fixtures get really sticky, not only for us, but for everybody. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be a bloodbath of injuries for most sides this season.
Miko.
Inter first, no question. Not much to add to Anthony's comment. I think we are almost like clear favorites at this point. And how would I say it? I don't see anything happening in the Mercato which would make me think differently. Maybe the clear favorite might drop out from that sentence. But if you may make some awesome signings like maybe Coop Miners, if they can do that, it might make the job for Inter a bit harder. But I think we are at this point we are like clear favorites, and the boogies agrees with me. Agree with me on that. So that's one betting tip as well.
Miko's hot betting tip. Okay.
Miko's hot betting tip is to place a bet $1 to win 50 cents wager.
Andrew, what say you? Are we cooking this season?
I am not optimistic whatsoever, but has more to do with my emotional baggage than anything else. Look, we're clear favorites, like Miko said with the bookies. We just don't know enough about the other teams right now to realistically pick one of them to win the Scudetto. Inzaghi's Inter is a known commodity. We know exactly what we can expect heading to the season. With Juve, you have a new manager and 4 or 5 different starters. We don't know how that's going to look put together. Milan, we have a better idea of because most of the players are back, but they still have a hole in attack. We don't know what Morata is going to look like, and their defense is still poor. I want to believe in Conte and Napoli because he's such a good manager, and especially with only the league. But it's not like they've reinforced the squad for him. it's August 11th and they still are trying to figure out the striker situation with Lukaku and Osimhen. There's just too much unknowns elsewhere, whereas Inter's like an old reliable stock that keeps paying dividends. You just know what you're signing up for, so it feels foolish to bet on anyone other than them. I'm just a little worried that we're looking at a situation similar to 2010 where we have an aging squad, we have an older squad. Maybe some of these guys' best days are behind them. I know you were asking about Summer earlier, but we also have Mkhitaryan, who's up there, Arnautovic, of course. There's enough older players in the squad where a few of these guys suffer with fitness, a few of these guys suffer with injuries. We're looking around and saying, well, Christ, we're starting, Fortezi every game. We're starting Aslani every game, and we're not feeling so good. So I am cautiously optimistic we're going to be able to hold serve this year. But man, Oak Tree, if you deliver me a signing, I'll feel a whole lot better about it. That's for sure.
Notice how you carefully wormed out of giving a prediction, but
I'm tentatively giving it to us, but I don't feel good about it.
I think it's really a crapshoot. I really do think that Milan have a great shout. I think they've closed the gap significantly with a new coach and some decent signings. I think Morata's a good signing and an improvement over Giroud and who they have, Jovic last season.
Have they signed any center backs?
They have still Jovic.
Oh, do they still have Jovic?
Yeah, I was about to say Jovic is definitely there this season.
I don't know. I don't know what their transfer business has been, but I think Fonseca is the biggest signing for them. And I think that you don't necessarily need to have one in this league to win again. Last couple of winners have all been first-time winners. Inzaghi, Spalletti, and then Pioli all won the Scudetto for the first time in the last 3 seasons. So there's no reason that Fonseca couldn't do it again.
Can't even say it with a straight face.
I'm partially kidding. No, look, I do think it's closer than some people might make out, mainly because I feel like we've stagnated. A lot of sentiment has been around the similarities between this season and the season after Conte won, where it felt like we're on the precipice of just cementing our legacy by a couple key signings here and we're good for the next 5 years kind of thing, but we just don't have the financial means to do that. So we're kind of like fighting tooth and nail to hold on to what we have. Obviously, we're in a more advantageous situation this time in that we have not lost our coach. We haven't sold our star striker Lukaku or the best young right wing back in the world in Hakimi, whatever. But the external context still feels very similar. Instead of kind of surging on with our lead, we're just kind of stopping and letting the others catch up. And as you guys have all touched upon, how much they've caught up is, remains to be seen. But I, for one, do think that there's enough interesting movement or enough movement there to make the race interesting. And given what I said earlier about the potential for complacency and things like this, I do, I don't think we can just expect all our players to play at the same level that they did last season just because, it's the same team and same coach and all that. Again, we don't have a history of these guys just going on winning runs like Juventus in the mid-2010s or Bayern Munich right up until last season kind of thing where, you've got your Mullers, your Gnabry's, your, Neuers, whoever. And in Juve, you had your Juve midfield with Pirlo and you had the BBC backline and etc. You know that these guys are just locked in to win and just grind out win after win after win after win and championship after championship. Again, I'm not saying that our guys don't have the capacity to do that. I'm just saying we don't yet have a established track record of them doing that. So I think it's a little bit more grey. I do agree that we are probably the favourites. I do agree that the change in coach or the changes in coaches for pretty much all of the chasing pack works in our favour to a degree. But at the same time, I don't rule out the possibility of it simply working for some of them, look at Inzaghi. He came in and did really well in his first season with us as well. There's no reason that Conte can't do well with Napoli, even though there's some nervy moments going on right now. Likewise, Fonseca at Milan. Likewise, Motta at Juventus. So I think it'll be a close season, but I do think we have the edge. Let me wrap up by asking you guys, what you want to see in the remaining couple of weeks of the Mercato, being as realistic as you can. Let's not play football fantasy manager here, but given the financial restraints, what kind of things would you like to see happen? Outgoings and incomings. I'll start, and I personally want to see a centre back signed. I do think surely there's got to be someone we can bring in for relatively cheap, sub 20 million, sub 15 million. I prefer we went for Hermoso. I really do think it's just like an obvious signing to make, given his pedigree and his quality, and the fact that he'll be free. That would allow us to make some movement in the striker or even wing back area as well. It just frees up some money to use elsewhere. I am also a bit concerned about the right back situation. Dumfries has kind of lost his place to go. He wanted to go to Man United apparently, but they've sold Wan-Bissaka to Aston Villa or West Ham. Again, I can never tell the two apart. And they bought in Mesraoui from Bayern Munich, so he's kind of lost that place that he was planning to go. So although the contract situation is concerning, I do feel like he's a little bit more likely to sign on now than he was maybe 2 weeks ago. The midfield, I don't know, man. I'm just not all that thrilled with the idea of Mkhitaryan starting another 40 games this season. Zielinski did not have a great season last season. Obviously, part of that was down to the contract issues between him and ADL, but it's up to him to show he can still be the player that he was under Spalletti. So yeah, for me, centre back is number one priority. And then if we can get someone like Hermoso who is free or low cost, then let's, use whatever breadcrumbs we can on the striker situation. Anthony, how about you? What do you want to see for the remaining 2 weeks of the Mercato?
Well, up until De Vrij went down in the 93rd minute, I would have probably was leaning more towards shift out the attacker situation. But yeah, I would have to agree with you. We need to beef up the central side of our defense. Just for the record, I really wasn't against the signing of Ricardo Rodriguez. I know his limitations. I know his technical abilities. But in terms of his experience and how much seriea he has played, how many different systems he's played in, and that gradual level of your career where you go from playing at a team and maybe not just not reaching the cusp that you wanted to, but downgrading that little bit, like someone with half a brain cell like Joaquin fucking Correa would do, and go to somewhere like Torino and reestablish yourself as somebody useful and even somebody with hands on in the locker room. But all for the record, that's not going to happen. But that's what I mean. We still need to fill that. Now that the reality check hit me like a ton of bricks when I saw De Vrij go down, that can and possibly will happen to Echenbi this season. We need to fill that ASAP. So that would be it. But for me, there is still a pipe dream to bring in Federico Chiesa for all banter and petty related reasons.
Ooh, that's a good call. Andrew?
Yep, Anthony just said it. Chiesa, that's my dream scenario. That's my dream Mercato. Bring him here. I don't care how you do it. Make him I don't care if you make him a sporting striker. I don't care if you make him your right wing back. That's my dream signing. If I'm being a bit more realistic about it, because I do think the most likely scenario for us signing Chiesa is on a free transfer next summer, if at all. I'd say a successful final few weeks of the Mercato would be unloading Correa, hopefully to someone like Genoa, just to get him off the books, using the open money to sign some striker, surely someone I've never heard of before, bring him in. As a fifth striker, we can play some rotational minutes. I don't know, maybe Monte makes sense if he's available on a loan or something, because Sassuolo can afford his wages. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall here. And then, yeah, a center-back signing. So realistically, if you can get rid of Correa, sign a fifth striker, or bring in a center-back, that's a satisfying, maybe satisfying is not the right word, is an acceptable Mercato. If we're sitting here on August 31st and Correa still in the squad and we haven't signed a center-back, that would be a F transfer Mercato. If you have a scenario where maybe you sign a defender but keep Correa, that's like a C. And if you manage to do both those tasks, I'm willing to give it like a B plus, A minus.
Miko?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick only one signing, and it's gonna be a defender because I don't see we're gonna do both what Andrew just said. But the interesting thing with the defender signing is that I think we've been linked to this left-sided and left-footed center backs like Hermoso and what was the guy? The Renan, the Brazilian guy, and then the
Zeze.
Nathan Zeze. Yeah. So all these guys are like clear Bastoni rotation players for the left center back role, and like it the same situation we had last season, that we had the same defenders like we have now. So it was like we missed one last season, and at this point it's the same thing. We are still missing one guy, and but I'm not sure, like, should we go to a guy who can play on the center or on the left? Of course, the best would be to have a guy who can play both, but can we realistically get such guy who can be that good?
Yeah, Hermoso.
That he can, yeah. Is he like a central defender?
He has experience playing in the middle, but it's a good question, Miko. Like, would you rather sign a reserve left center back, or would you rather sign a center back, assuming you can't have both?
Yeah. That's the question I'm looking here. That who it's gonna be, because although the rumors are pointing that we are looking a player who can really play the ball like Bastoni can play. I think these, well, okay, okay. I'm not too familiar with these guys, but just looking the YouTube videos, that they look like players who can play the ball. At least the Renan guy looked like that. Maybe Hermoso is more like a that kind of a defender who can really defend and not just be fancy there. But you get my point. That
Okay.
which one it's gonna be? That's interesting, because I can see, like you guys said, the risk that Acerbi and De Vrij are both out or like not in top condition. It's a real risk at this point. Like we've discussed like many episodes already during last season. At the end of last season, we discussed the same thing. So it's really interesting to see how Inzaghi is going to react to this possible issue we might be having here.
Have we sold Carboni?
Yeah, he's gone to Marseille.
Loaned to Marseille.
Loaned with an absurd buy option.
Yeah.
But Jay, I'm not
40
going to let you off
million.
the hook. You have to answer your own question.
Oh, I said I wanted to sign Hermoso and then use whatever money's left over to get a striker. But yeah, I don't know, guys. It's the lack of movement is a little bit worrying. I think Andrea kind of made the key takeaway from this episode right at the beginning when he said the vibes are cooked. You know, there's just something a bit off canter about the vibes right now. It's been an extremely muted Mercato. It's been an extremely quiet preseason. We haven't played anyone of note. We haven't made any signings of note, and I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. Maybe I'm just not used to a preseason like this, but it feels a bit off. It feels a bit off.
Well, last summer we had this revolution in the squad where we signed like 10 new names. This summer, we're not linked to anyone. There are seriously no reports. I could not tell you a single player we're incredibly linked to right now. Like, you know, if you're a forum member and the transfers and rumors part of the forum, we like have player threads for when we're actively linked to a player. And they're like none open right now because there are just no players we're in negotiations for. Just it feels eerily quiet, even though everyone agrees we should be signing a player and we should have some money available.
Goodman.
That's why everyone's just hoping for that last week Hail Mary. Hopefully, the last 2 weeks is a long time in the Mercato, though. We all know this.
For sure, it would have been nice to have any kind of new signing or a marquee signing with us in preseason to gel with the squad. But yeah, what can you do? Is the Goodmanson track still open, or is he moving to Fiorentina?
I feel like they're not going to sell him now that Retegui was scooped up by Atalanta.
Yeah, or then it's linked to the Nico Gonzalez moving to Juve. That like maybe it's pending that. I believe it's loan with obligation what the Genoa and Fiorentina have agreed. But
what about
then
Juventus and Fiorentina for Gonzalez?
Yeah, I think that's some ridiculous 30 million deal in place, and I don't get how Fiorentina is acting like Juve's farm team at this point. They are like making so many Juve favorable deals every time with them.
Like
I
Artur
don't get
Melo
it.
and Moise Kean
Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah,
Federico Chiesa and
Moise Keane was a bad one, but maybe I'm on an island here. Like,
Dusan Vlahovic
yeah,
and Roberto
Bernardeschi.
Baggio and Felipe
So
Melo.
do you guys think 30 million is a fair evaluation
That's
for
what
Nico
I was gonna say,
Gonzalez? Because
Anthony. Like, that seems like a reasonable amount of money for a player I don't rate that much. What do you think?
uh,
I think
th-
I think 25 million is a decent price for him. Anything over that, you're stretching it. But now this is exactly what happens when you show your cards literally in front of every single poker player on the table, which is why I think Giuntoli's Mercato is drastically overrated.
That's a fair point.
oh, you don't rate how great their defense are. The Todibo and Calafiori are there, so you don't rate that.
Well, and I'm also reading that they've loaned out Jallo and Rugani as well, which probably shouldn't have been done without wrapping up Todibo. So yeah, bravo.
Well, who are Juventus centre backs right now? Bremer and
Gatti, no
Yeah,
glorified
or
concrete.
or Danilo.
Danilo,
I don't
yeah,
know.
Yeah.
Is it like a right back more or something?
I think so.
Juve
But
is
yeah,
going to be the
but,
most interesting Mercato to watch down the stretch because just what are they going to do with these 5 or 6 players? It's going to be pure theater.
yeah, because it looks like Giuntoli doesn't actually have the money for all these moves, so he's making these loan plus right to buy kind of offers everywhere, like the Todibo
He basically went
case.
out with
And
daddy's credit card, racked up all these charges, and now Bill's paying and he's hawking his items on eBay to try and, make do.
yeah, but about Gonzalez, Fiorentina bought him for 25 million few years ago, and I think he's worth more than 30. To me, he's like a national team player, and I think he's pretty good. I'm not sure if he's a bit. Is he picking a bit too many injuries? I'm not sure about that, but maybe.
I agree with both you guys. Like, I've not. I mean, there are certainly some glimpses of talent there, or more than glimpses. There's a lot of talent there. He's a technical player, and I think he's a good player for Fiorentina. And so 30 million does seem reasonable to me. But at the same time, this is a Chelsea market, where any shithead can go for 50 million. And so in that context, if you are a Fiorentina fan, you'd be hoping for 40 at least, especially from
Yeah.
your hated rival like Juventus. But it is what it is. As you said, Fiorentina have a tendency to claim to hate Juventus only to bend over for them in the market. So what can you do?
I mean, I remember literally during last season, or was it last summer, there were like rumors that they had rejected like 40 million offers, but that might be like BS. But it's just the 30 million is low to me at this point. That's my that's my opinion on Gonzalez. But yeah, like you said, that's just the way Fiorentina seems to want to operate with Juve.
I want to, before we wrap up, I want to hit you guys. Anthony said something earlier that inspired a thought in me. We all remember where we were when Correa scored his brace at the start of his Inter career. I personally was in a hotel room in St. Louis, still remember it vividly. But if you start thinking of your favorites or your most surprising Inter player debuts, does anything come to mind for you guys beyond Correa? I have a couple that have really stuck with me over the years, but Jay, I know you have a incredible memory. What is your favorite Inter debut of all time?
Maybe Mauro Zarate when he was taken off after 26 minutes. No, I can't. Maybe
Fuck sake. I haven't thought about that in a long time, bro.
Ranocchia when he got a red card in his debut match.
Much like Vidic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a lot of famous debuts over the years. A notable one is obviously my favorite player, Recoba, kind of outshining R9 and scoring 2 just world-class long-distance goals with his left foot against Brescia back in like 97. But to keep it more modern, and even this is Jesus, 13 years ago. I'm going to go with Pazzini against, I think it was against Palermo when we signed Pazzini for, I think, 20 million from Sampdoria in the January transfer market. And we were losing 2-1 or 3-2 to Palermo, and then he scored 2 goals. And yeah, I thought that was a pretty memorable debut.
Yeah, I think he scored 2 goals and won a penalty that Eto converted for the 3rd goal.
You might be right, yeah. And I think Julio Cesar saved a penalty from Pastore that would have saved us from being 3-1 down, I think.
What about you, Anthony? You have one besides Correa's introduction to Inter?
Pazzini one was the one I was going to go with. No joke, because we don't get Serie ever in this country. However, this was in a very unique time where one of our mainstream broadcasters, called Channel 10, they had this side breakaway channel where they would show one Serie A game per, like, I don't even think it was per week, Jay. I think it was like per fortnight.
Yeah, I
and
remember
we
this.
got really lucky.
Yeah, I saw this on TV.
We got really lucky.
You're right.
We got really lucky. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday. I'm like, bro, this is fucking awesome. I don't even have uni the next day. I'll watch Inter on a big screen instead of on a dodgy stream on a laptop, skipping every 2 seconds. It was awesome. I remember it was like 9:30 p.m. and seeing Pazzini grab both of those. So I can't even say any other answer, Andrew, because that one stood out as soon as he started answering that question, because the whole thing sticks out to me so vividly because it was such a convenient watch.
Yeah, you're right.
The rights got taken away from the end of it straight away, because go figure, no one in Australia is watching Serie A in between 9:30 and midnight on a Sunday night.
Yeah, right. It was on TV. And now you mention it, I remember that. I was thinking, what are the chances it's on like free to air TV in Australia? But now you're 100% right.
Yeah, it is kind of incredible. We have 2 of the 4 Australian Inter fans in the world on this podcast.
I don't know if anybody else would agree. 2 out of 4 Inter debuts would bring up the Pazzini one for that reason. So there it is. That's unique.
Miko, you got any?
I don't have as a good memory as you guys, as we've seen before. But
the old age catching up to you.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna pick one match, but I'm gonna pick a player, and it's gonna be Stefano Sensi. I remember when he came to Inter, and when the season started, it was the first Conte season, and we had signed Barella in that same summer. And I remember how good Sensi was at the start, how impactful he was, and I think he started more than Barella at the start. At the start of the season, Barella wasn't like a fixed starter immediately, but Sensi was, and he really took his place in the there in the team immediately. That was kind of a bit of a surprise to me when we signed him, and then he started, like, he got going immediately.
Sensi was, he was on fire during preseason. Barella actually got injured, I think, during preseason and kind of didn't start, or was like kind of slowly integrated into the team. And since he scored on debut as well against Lecce in a 4-0 win, and scored again against Udinese, a header, no less. And he was fantastic for about 8 games, and then he got injured against Juventus, and that's the last we ever saw of Stefano Sensi.
Yeah.
He's back at Monza, but when I saw him signing for Monza, I had a little bit of nostalgia myself, and I was thinking, man, it's a shame that this guy essentially lost the prime of his career just due to constant injuries, because those, 7-8 games, he was legit excellent,
Yeah, he was simply great. He scored 3 goals in 6 games at the start of that season.
Yeah, something like that. Best midfielder in Italy for 2 months.
Yeah, and when we played against Barcelona in the away match,
in the Champions League, he was excellent. Yeah,
they were he got linked to Barcelona, and because he looked like Barca player in a sense in his playing style and so on. But yeah, that was a short career, like a proper career, I think.
My answer to the question is slight cheating, but I'm Melito. I think we all remember treble season. We like drew the first game, Bari, but yeah, to Bari. But the second game was the derby against Milan, and I just remember watching Melito in that game. He scored a penalty and maybe 2 goals. Just from watching this guy and going, "Yep, this is it. We've got a good one here."
Penalty and 2 assists, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I remember it was 4-0 final. I don't remember who scored the other goal. I know he got the penalty for sure, and he is the one who drew it, I believe.
Yeah, he drew the penalty from Gattuso, who got sent off. And then he set up Maicon and Thiago Motta for the first goal. I remember that game vividly. I was in Korea watching it, and goddamn, that was one of the best games.
Yeah, I remember that. That was this match day too. So it was the Mercato was still open, and we had just signed Snyder, and I think
he played without even training. He played with. He wasn't listed in like the match. We used to call up. We used to announce like the full list of players called up to the match day squad. We don't think we do that anymore, but we used to do that, and he wasn't included among those called up, at least on the website. And then he just started the fucking game.
yeah, and he was Snyder was awesome as well in that match. That was a great debut as well.
Oh yeah,
but maybe not so surprising, but great. Anyway,
now that I think about it, Snyder really was like that debut, and Snyder just really felt like the missing piece, and that game really kind of gave us that preview into that. He was sensational. He was just taking pot shots from like 30 meters and like coming super close to scoring. Tested Storari a few times. Yeah.
I don't know. How did you remember Storari? But yeah, he was indeed on the goal.
You don't remember Storari?
played at Juventus in
Milan.
I didn't remember that he was starting for Milan at that time. So yeah,
he was.
No
Milan
way.
Had
I remember.
Milan had a weird period where they went through all these kind of shit keepers like Abbiati and Željko Kalac and Storari and before they kind of struck gold with Donnarumma.
Yeah, Miko, I don't know if you know this, but Jay can name every Milan starting 11 back until 2005.
Predictions for Chelsea tonight?
3-0, Lukaku hat-trick.
I don't care if we lose 7-0, just everybody walk off the pitch unscathed, please.
That's a good point. I was thinking to myself, considering Correa's been so useless, I kind of expected a little bit more from Thuram. I want him to kind of pick up the baton a little bit more. I mean, I know it's only preseason, but, he hasn't scored or anything, hasn't really played that well from what I've seen either. So, again, he tended to look like rubbish last preseason, only to come to life during the season. But if it's true that we're going into the season with, Taremi injured, arnautovic injured, or Lautaro not fit yet, and Correa being Correa, then I'd really hope to see more out of Thuram this season. Actually, that's a good way to wrap up and end this. Can you guys each tell me a player that you're looking to really take a leap forward this season? Anthony, tell me which player you're kind of counting on for that leap up.
Well, I don't know if it's a fair thing to say, but I expect to see more of Fratesi. But I think when he was given the opportunity, he performed well and truly for us. He lived up to his hype, to his price tag with the minutes given. So I guess with the minutes given, I hope to see that level of productivity. So I probably didn't answer your question fairly enough there, but maybe I guess I could just elaborate a little bit more on what I said very early in the podcast about Bisek. I think that the minutes that he will be given this season will be substantially more than last, and physically he just looks in great shape. I'd love to see if he can, diversify his role in the back three. If we can use him across the board, that would be even better. So I'm all in for Bisek, but also this is the sort of season where, because we bought him for peanuts, didn't we? Like 8 million, 9 million, something like that. This will be one of the seasons where he has a shitload of suitors lined up for him at the end of the campaign, if he does have a campaign as good as I hope he will.
Do you want to see him in the middle role, or should he be seen as a viable replacement for Acerbi/De Vrij?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Absolutely. I really thought Benji Pavard would be able to transition a little more centrally, a little easier. Maybe he doesn't want to. I don't know. Fuck knows. But between Pavard and Bisek, you assume that we should be able to sort it out, right?
Yeah, for me, Pavard is not strong enough in the air to play that central role. He's a little bit thinner as well, just like a kind of slimmer build. So I do, maybe it's a little bit old-fashioned, but I do like having your kind of most physically dominant centre-back as your middle centre back. So it kind of makes sense for Acerbi to be that guy right now. But yeah, I totally agree. I would really love to see Bissek play. I really love for us to solve that kind of problem of the middle centre back with internally by getting Bissek to kind of deputise in that role. Andrew, who are you looking for to take a leap forward this season?
This is a tough question to answer because I feel like most of the answers are going to be one of Bissek, Aslani, or Frattesi. I feel like those are kind of the obvious like younger players who are trending up. So I'm going to try to go off the board and go with Augusto. I think there's another level to him. He wasn't involved much in creative play last year, wasn't involved a ton in creating and scoring goals. If we're going to be playing more matches, DeMarco is going to maybe need more breaks. I could see Augusto being more of a contributor, so I'll go with him.
Miko.
And you managed to take my pick, so I'm gonna be a bit edgier here now, and and I'm gonna take or I'm gonna say DeMarco. No matter how great he has been, I want him to be even more like him to be more like decisive and like just be better with the shooting and with the crosses and everything. Even though he is so good, but I see him being able to be even better, and maybe that's how do you say it? We can do that by giving Augusto more playing time, and that way like reduce DeMarco's playing time, and maybe he can be even better that way. But yeah, Augusto was my original pick too. I can see him being if he can be more offensive in his game. I feel like he was a bit he played a bit limited role or a bit restricted football last season. I think that was because maybe he thought maybe too much about the defensive side, and he didn't just play like more free flowing role like we see from especially DeMarco. I can see Augusto being better for our offensive game if he like puts more focus on that, because we saw in Monza, I don't know, was he their best scorer, but he scored like 6 goals 2 seasons ago for Monza, and probably some assists on top of that. So I wanna see more from him as well.
I'm surprised none of you said Lautaro. I think he had a monster of a season last season, but if we were to kind of pick holes in it, he was a little bit missing in the Champions League, especially when we got to the knockout game or knockout stage against Atleti. Obviously spurned a number of chances which could have helped us put the leg to bed rather. And also he ended up kind of going missing for 9 or 11 games or something like that, and not scoring for a long stretch as well. Still somehow managing to finish as a capocannoniere thanks to his exceptional early season form. But my pick was Thuram, but I'm also going to give a shout out for Lautaro. If he can truly, I remember I was watching Interworldwide, actually. Shout out to Interworldwide, where you did like a tier rating of the players' seasons, how good a season they had, and you didn't give Lautaro S, you gave him an A, which I thought was absolutely perfect, because pretty much of those two things that I mentioned, his Champions League form and his consistency. So if Lautaro can truly take that step to like unquestionably elite form or unquestionably elite level, then I think those are the two things he really needs to improve on: his consistency and his big game in Europe kind of pedigree. But all right, I think that just about does us for today. Thank you again, Anthony, for coming on. Looking forward to more Interjections X Interworldwide collabs in the future.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure to be here. It was great to speak with yourself, Miko, Andrew. Look forward to speaking again, and thanks to everyone for listening. Keep doing what you're doing, boys, because I'm definitely enjoying the content, and I'm looking forward to another good season. I feel like we're going to have a lot of luck.
All right. Andrew, Miko.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. Bye.